Hi y'all. I'm going to try really hard to not make this an hour-long rant. So Slayer is a young adult horror novel written by Kiersten White. It is a continuation in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a television show that premiered in 1997 and was created by writer and director Joss Whedon. The show is about a teenage girl who fights vampires and monsters, except that the vampires and monsters are really just metaphors for things that are in her way of growing up. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a show about growing up, about what it means to grow up, and the show explores the human heart and the human condition as a whole. The show is one of the most iconically wonderful examples of storytelling that I can point to, and it shows incredible mastery of both literary and visual metaphors. The show was so important that not only are there numerous academic works published about the show, but 20 years after the show has been canceled, there are still entire college courses dedicated to teaching about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This one is a collection of papers about the philosophies explored in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and this one was written by a PhD English professor and contains that much in references. So that was the show. Now, this book is set in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it is set with a new Slayer after the events of both the show and the comic strip have transpired. It is flat out impossible to talk about this book without comparing it to the show, but I will start with the good first. I did like the strategy of making the new Slayer far more integrated into the Watchers Council than Buffy ever was, simply because this gives us a whole new environment in which to explore what it is to be a Slayer. However, it's also inherently problematic because in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Watchers Council was a metaphor. It was a real council that Buffy had to deal with, but the council was a metaphor for patriarchy. It was something that she had to overcome. In the lore of the show, the Watchers created the very first Slayer in a scene with so many layered vulgarities that the only way they could put it on TV was to wrap it up in visual metaphors. And then the Watchers Council for the next millennia sought to control the power of each subsequent Slayer. The Watchers treated the Slayer as a tool. They told her where to go, they told her what to do, and they treated her with the same level of respect and consideration as you would treat a standard issue hammer in your toolbox. If a Slayer couldn't perform, or a Slayer couldn't jump through all the hoops the Watchers Council set up for her to jump through, then she was killed and another younger Slayer was brought in to do the job. Until Buffy. And what made Buffy special wasn't that she was inherently any stronger than any Slayer that had come before her. It was that she refused to bear her burden alone. She, unlike previous Slayers, did not allow her person to be defined by being a Slayer. She surrounded herself with friends who helped her, and she chose to be trained and mentored by a Watcher Council outcast who was loyal to her. Buffy was stronger because she believed she wasn't strong enough, and she allowed those who loved her to help her. It was only through that very human process that she learned that she was strong enough to face her challenges. Not because she was imbued with the power of the Slayer, but because she was Buffy.
No weapons, no friends, no hope. Take all that away, and what's left?
Me.
The book is not on any level close to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The monsters are monsters. They're characters and they're nothing more than that. They don't stand for anything. They're not obstacles to overcome. And there's nothing deeper there. And where the show never shied away from dealing with controversial issues or from dealing with emotional problems head on, Slayer comes off as very one-dimensional in a YA cliche sort of way. In the world of Buffy, morally gray circumstances and characters existed, and it was regularly acknowledged that no matter what path you chose, sometimes things wouldn't work out right. The show was set in a world of 1990s high school, and it followed a teenage girl in all of her teenage girliness, but it used that setting to explore deeper human issues.
Sometimes when I'm everyone's so busy agreeing with me, they don't hear a word I say.
Well, if you feel so alone, then why do you work so hard at being popular?
Well, it beats being alone all by yourself.
In this book, everything feels like it can be wrapped up and packaged with a really pretty bow. This is good, and this is bad, and we're done here. Everything is clean, and everything is either black or white, no matter the characters or the plot or any of the circumstances anyone has to deal with. It's flat, and it's easy, and it's forgettable, and there's no heart in the story. Another thing I need to bring up is the tone. Buffy is a horror genre, but it never takes itself too seriously. Buffy regularly pokes fun at itself, and its constant humor is a big part of what makes the show so watchable. The characters are well aware of how ridiculous their world is, and they react accordingly.
Clark Kent has a job. I just want to go on a date.
Well, I suppose it was a fairly slim lead.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And look, I won't go far, okay? If the apocalypse comes, beat me.
In Slayer, everything is so heavy and so serious all the time, but the characters are also one-dimensional that it's just constant melodrama. The main way that conflict is developed in this book is by having all of the characters never opening their word hole and talking to each other. There was one joke that I thought reached the level of Buffy-esque. One. In summary, Slayer is a surface-level YA fantasy horror novel. I'm not saying it's not good. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and I really do think that if you enjoy this genre and you are not a fan of the show, then you will probably like this book. It gets 3 stars because it is an average YA fantasy horror novel, but this book does not deserve to be Buffy canon. It is not on Buffy's level. Now, in an effort to be perfectly fair, Buffy the show itself got out to a rough start. Season 1 was a mid-season replacement for another show that got canceled. It had a shoestring budget, it was rushed, it was rough. But even in that horrid first season, the show displayed a skill with language and wit and intelligence, not to mention charm, that wanted an audience, despite having the world's most ridiculous title.
I just don't like putting you guys in danger.
Oh, I laugh in the face of danger. Then I hide until it goes away.
I'm not feeling that same it factor from this book. I hope I'm wrong. I am going to give the second book a chance. The second book I think is called Chosen. Put a picture of it here. It is out right now. But I'm gonna wait for it to go on sale. So that's all from me today. Have you read Slayer by Kiersten White? And if not, are you interested in reading it now? What are your thoughts? Also, if this review has in any way piqued your interest in checking out Buffy the Vampire Slayer the show, I am going to link the video from Passion of the Nerd, why you should watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's 6 minutes long, it's worth your time. Please check it out. And until then, bye-bye. It's flat and it's easy and it's forgettable and it is not Buffy. The book comes across as a very shallow and YA cliche book.